Welcome to Make It Plain from Make Plain Jesus Ministries, featuring Pastor James Bryan, where we take biblical truths in everyday situations and break them down to be as plain as possible. So, stay tuned and enjoy the broadcast.
Welcome to this installment of Make It Plain. It's always a privilege to come and speak with you and just to explain or at least put out there a few thoughts that would kind of change your perspective and have you look at life differently. You know, right now, as we are in 2020, we are experiencing all kinds of challenges and there are perceptions and misperceptions all over the world, and especially in this country, that seem to be conflicting with differing viewpoints and causing reactions that may not all be positive. But right now, I just want to talk about a topic which some of you will look at and think it's hilarious. Some will look at it and scratch your head like, what is this? And others will look at it and listen and say, you know what? You're right. So hopefully this gives you a little bit more of insight into a topic that we don't always talk about, but does exist. And so the topic today is, you ready? If I had a drum like I am right now, my beat on the desk, I would be, you can tell I'm not a drummer. Okay, I got it. But the topic for today, all joking aside, is preaching at work. Preaching at work. You know, this is a challenge and a topic that a lot of Christians go through, and they may not even know it. And so what ends up happening, there's a scenario. Let me paint a general picture to kind of get you on the same page about what I am talking about. You see, John Doe Christian goes to church on Sunday, dressed in a suit or whatever the attire is for that particular church gathering or that location, and they're excited. They're waving their Bible or their Bible app, and they're reciting whatever the pastor said, and hopefully that message got them inspired and they're ready for the week, the challenges ahead. And so they're going home and thinking about everything that happened, and they're making more of a commitment to being a good Christian and following Jesus and all those other good things. They go to bed at night, lay their head on the pillow after they said the prayers. And the next morning they go marching into work excited for the week. And someone says, "Hey, John." And the answer is, "Well, praise the Lord. How are you?" And the person looks at him kind of funny. And then he goes a little bit farther. "Hey, you did a good job, John." "Oh, well, thank you. I'm highly favored. I'm anointed for this position, and God has shown me a way, and so that's why it was so successful." So they stop. They look at him again, and they start wondering, what just happened? And so then John goes throughout his day, and all he talks about are Christian words that he heard in that message. The challenge with this scenario, aside being kind of obvious, and I know if you're truthful, some of you have done this. And so you're in this point where you're speaking to people who may not be Christians, or may not even go to church, or may not go to your church. And now all of a sudden you're throwing in these terms which you're excited about, and you're at the job which is not a Christian employer. And all of a sudden you've opened up a can of worms or an interesting concept or a challenge that the people have to address and figure out how to do that. You see, a lot of times we'll go through and we try to use Christianese, as we like to call it, Christian language that we use in church settings, but no one else outside the church setting even understands it, right? And so we use that at church at times, and all that does is confuse people, and sometimes it alienates folks. And then we wonder, why don't they want to hear the good news? Why don't they want to come and sit with me so I can tell them all about Jesus? Why won't they just stop? You know they need it. You know, all those things go through the mind. But if we ever stop for a minute to think about how we were communicating, then we would understand that maybe that wasn't the right way to address it. Now, I know this may be somewhat I won't say controversial, but somewhat challenging for some folks. But I'm going to say the following, and I want you to know that my intentions are good as I go through and talk about this. You see, sometimes when we go to work in a secular environment, now, if you're working for a ministry, that's a different thing. But if you're working for a secular employer, you have to understand the environment in which you're in. You see, first of all, we all as Christians should at least want to share the gospel with everybody on the earth. That's a great thing to do. That's a great desire to have. You're right on point if that's what drives you. But the how is really where the question is. So let me begin to put it to you this way. So when you go and work for an employer, the employer hires you for your skills, right? They're hiring you for the skills that you can bring to their company and help their company grow and succeed. They aren't hiring you for your quality of preaching, your quality of evangelism. They aren't hiring you for any of those things. So now what you have is a situation where you're trying to put in place something else that wasn't intended. Now, think about it for a minute. Yes, all the emergency vehicles just went by, but no matter. I want you to hear it from this perspective. If they brought you in for a particular purpose, then it's, as a Christian, your job, my job, to make sure that we are doing that work as if we were doing it unto the Lord, because we really are, right? There's a scripture that talks about that. And so what we have to do is, since we agreed to work there under whatever arrangements were set up to achieve whatever goals that you have in front of you, then as a Christian, you have to honor that. So the first thing we need to realize is that we're coming in there first to work and help that organization. Now, I know for some they're saying, wait a minute, you're trying to deny that I'm a Christian. No, I'm not. I'm not. Hang in there. But what I need you to understand that they're bringing you in for your expertise in whatever area that is. They didn't bring you in to preach at work. They brought you in to do work. The second thing you have to understand is when you're in a environment where there are people from various backgrounds and everything else, you have to at least build a relationship so that you get to understand them and have a dialogue with them. Because it's very rare that you go into a place, unless God said do it this way, that you can go into a place and just start preaching at them, because they will close their ears or, in fact, get even angry that you're doing that. And then your tenure there may not be very long. But what God usually wants us to do is go in and actually work, do an excellent job at whatever task that's in front of us, add whatever value we can add. Because remember, we ask the Lord for wisdom to do all kinds of things. So when we do that, we're bringing value. They don't have to know or understand yet that the Lord is working, but what you're doing is adding value to that organization. And so when you're coming in, you're connecting with folks from various backgrounds, getting to understand them, and not just to understand them so that you can then be positioned to share the gospel, but you genuinely care about their well-being. And so you begin to work, and the grace of God will come through you and actually help them and then open the eyes of some, right? And so when you're at that point of doing work and then building the relationship, that puts you in a position to do what God's going to want you to do. Third thing you have to do is always carry the general principles of just getting to the point of being honest, truthful, right? Have it salted with grace. So when you communicate, even if people are, as you in your minds may be the most heathenistic people, you got to understand everybody starts somewhere. And so you got to use the grace that the Lord even gave you. Grace. And so when he gives you grace, then you're able to interact with them. You're able to encourage them. You're able to build a relationship. You're able to get to the point that even if you are John Doe Christian or Jane Doe Christian, and the people you work with are from literally every religion around the world, yet you still care for their well-being. Never changing who you are, but you care for their well-being. Because Jesus even loved the world. He didn't say only those who were perfected. He didn't say only those that live at First Christian Church on the corner of, Maple and Elm. He didn't say that. He so loved the world because he does. And so because he does, we do. But it doesn't mean we transform ourselves back into those habits. So the next thing you have to look at is you come in, you're doing the work, and you're doing it as unto the Lord. You come in and build a relationship and show that you really do care. You're interacting with them, speaking with them with some grace poured upon it or salted upon your words from that point. Then at that point, something begins to happen. And this is by design. This is the way the Lord usually works it. Then at that point, you're able to have a conversation. You see, early in your relationship building, when you first are coming to that organization, they'll ask you things like, especially on a Monday, hey, how was your weekend? And you can talk about all kinds of things that are so Christianese that they'll look at you and not even understand and never even build a relationship. But you can be honest and say, oh, I had a great time. My family goes to church on Sunday. And then after that, we went out and, ate dinner. We went out and walked on the boardwalk. We were home and we played catch. We cooked out, whatever it was that you did. And that's what you talk about. And so from that perspective, it is not a big deal up front saying that, oh, they're preaching this and that and so on, because they're not there yet. But once you've done it, later on, once you build that relationship, here's what you're able to do on that next Monday morning. They say, how was your day? Oh, it was wonderful. Then they'll say, oh, did you go to church? Because now there's an interest. They realize that you're not a green alien, that you are someone from this planet, and that you can speak and talk about regular things in life. Now they trust you enough to open up about other areas in their life, and they're asking you your thoughts or asking you what would God say about this and that. Then your door of opportunity opens because now you're sharing real love. What do I mean by real love? You're sharing the Lord and his heart. Isn't that what this is all about? That you're here to just share the good news. You don't have to run like John the Baptist and start saying from the top of your lungs, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. That's not what you have to do. You just are able to relate. You're able to now talk. You're able to let them see you. Now, let me put a caution flag here. Let me put a warning flag here. Make sure your walk is according to what God would say is good. Don't put on just priestly garments, but have never washed underneath. In other words, make sure you're walking like a Christ follower. Because everyone else will understand whether you're faking it or whether you really mean it. And so whenever a crisis will come, if you build those relationships, guess who they'll come to and ask for guidance? They'll come to you. When they come to you, then you take those moments, and it's often at an inconvenient time, but it's important to them that you take the moments out and begin to speak with them. You don't have to preach at them. Just speak with them and give them truth. And so when people begin to ask, well, how do you know that? Or where did that wisdom come from and all? You can say, well, it's the Lord just showing me some things. And so that's all it is. And you just go lightly like that. Because after a while, the curiosity will build. And that's how it begins to work. But you see, every time I've come across in my career anyway, folks that want to just preach from day one at people, it never works long. Because in the end, folks begin to complain, and then they give extra scrutiny to, are they producing anything? Or are they only coming to preach at us? And those people that I've seen in those predicaments are usually ones that don't last long in those organizations. Now again, let me make this clear. I am not telling you to forsake your faith, your Christian faith. In no way and form am I saying that. What I am saying is you have to have wisdom in how you interact with people. You have to have wisdom in how you are able to just talk about the good news. The Lord always opens the door. You just have to be patient and speak when he says to speak. Just think about it. Think about Bible characters. When you think about Joseph, Joseph went through a lot of tumultuous times, but he was around people that didn't believe like him. But God had a plan, and he kept him depending on the Lord, even though times his faith was failing him. And when the Lord brought him out, he declared who the Lord is, and then others saw and they believed because there were results. There were things that Joseph was bringing to the table to help any organization, country, or whatever that he was associated with to prosper. It was God's hand working through him. And so because they saw what he brought to the table, then they listened to him about his God. That's the formula. So what can you bring to the table is the question. What can you bring to a relationship to make it worthwhile for the person who doesn't know the Lord to even stop and listen to your first sentence? What can you deliver? Are you dependable? Can you get the work on time? Are you on the telephone all the time and not meeting deliverables? Are you pleasant with customers? What value can you add? And so then in those cases, and that's how you're able to carry your Christ faith 7 days a week. Otherwise, you're not really showing your faith 7 days a week. And so in the midst of those things, that's what I want you to understand. Preaching at work is not what they hired you to do. They want you to come and deliver value. When you can deliver value, then you have opportunities in the harvest field. When you can deliver value, then you have opportunities to speak at the highest of levels. When they see results, then they'll stop and wonder, what's your motivation? Who is showing you these things? How did you learn? These are these opportunities that we discuss, the things that we have to remember that this is the way in. It's not always an instant gratification of someone heard the word and they're saved. If any of you fish on a regular basis, and that's not me, there are folks at our church that do, and thank God for them. But from everything that I've heard, there are times when you have to sit and you pull a little bit and then let the fish out a little bit more. Then you pull it in a little bit more. You keep doing that until you get to a point that you're able to get what you need. It's the same thing with winning souls. You pour in until you get the results. So what I'm saying to you is this. Preaching at work is not usually the way to go. But your lifestyle should preach. But you're preaching from day one, from the beginning, without ever going through the steps that I mentioned, is not a recipe for success. So think about how you've been interacting with people. Think about the ones that you really want to get saved, but it doesn't seem like it's working. How have you approached them? How have you gotten to the point of interacting with them? And did you even pray for them? Sometimes those prayers take a while to come to fruition. But if you don't faint, if you don't give up, guess what? They will. Remember the story of Elijah when he had to pray for rain? It didn't come after the first time. It didn't come after the second time. It took several times. And then finally, when it came in a small cloud. But guess what? It wasn't this big cloud. It started out as the size of a fist. You see how small that is? Look at your fist. Close your hand. Look at your fist. That's the size of the result of his prayer when he called for rain. He could have said, what is this going to do? But instead, He had faith and knew rain was coming, and then he reacted to it. The same way when you are at work. That's more in line about how the Lord wants you to preach, rather than standing up there and say, hey, heathen folks, I'm here. Or you folks who don't understand me, I'm here. Or you folks that you need Jesus, I'm here to tell you. You need to make sure that you're following the steps in which I told you. Then you have better results. So if you take inventory right now, have you fallen short in some areas with even interacting with folks? Have you fallen short in getting to know folks? Have you gotten to the point that you said, well, I'm already saved, so I don't need to interact with them? But sometimes God puts you in places with others that he wants you to interact with them so they can see how God has changed you and me. That in itself is the beginning of the preaching conversation. So think about what I just shared with you. Think about what I just put in front of you. And as you go throughout your workday, remember those aspects. And for those who have not yet committed to the Lord but understand what I'm saying, just understand this. You can encourage your Christian friends who come right at you and say, look, you're starting this wrong. I understand your intent and I'm not there yet, but I just heard a podcast in which they talked about the best way to do it, the best genuine way to do it. And so in those cases, that's what I want to share. And so that's what you should share to them so that they understand too. With that being said, I hope this was helpful. I hope in this installment that it is something practical that you can put to use. And then the last thing, I'm saying this jokingly, but I'm somewhat serious about it. Don't try to circumvent everything and then try to wear into your place of employment whenever people get back together, or your team gatherings, or even on your Zoom calls or whatever you're using, T-shirts that says, you have to be saved, or the king is coming, or get saved and not go to hell, things like that, while you have the camera on. And you could even say, I'm not preaching at them. Well, with your mouth you aren't, but your T-shirt is saying something different. So just understand that the Lord will lead you on the proper way to get to each person's heart, because he really knows their heart. And so all we really have to do is say, Lord, let us be a vessel, show us how to interact with them, and let them hear the good news that I have also heard. Thank God for you. Tune in for our next episode. Every one of them are different, and they are built to just keep going higher and higher and give you more practical tools. So if this is a blessing to you, let us know. Interact with us. Send us a message and let us know that we're able to just touch the things that concern you. If there are major things that you would love to hear about topic-wise, feel free to send those also. May God bless you until we talk again.